Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Teresa Castro, and I'm a proud alumna and staff member in UNC's Office of Alumni Relations. Thank you all for joining today for the Alumni Career Panel, Careers in the Public Sector. Today we will learn from and connect with fellow UNC Bears working in this industry. Before I introduce you to our panelists, I would like to share a few housekeeping items. First, this event will be recorded and will be available on demand a week after the event on the alumni website. I will post the link in the chat. Two, I invite you to start building your network and reach out to our panelists after the event. I will also post your contact information in the chat. And three, I will go off screen after introductions and will return toward the end of this virtual event to provide a closing statement. As we highlight the careers of these alumni, I invite students, fellow staff, and faculty to ask questions via the Q&A feature. Now, please help me welcome our panelists. Panelists, please introduce yourself by stating your name, your pronouns, title, the organization you work for, your UNC degree, and a little bit about yourself. Gabriella, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Gabriella Campbell. I use pronouns she, her, hers. I am currently a social worker for the Public Defender's Office in Douglas County. I graduated from UNC in 2020 with a major in psychology and a minor in communication studies. I currently live in the Douglas County area with my dog, like to be outdoors, and yeah, that's a little bit, I guess, about me. I'll get to know a little bit more later, but
Thank you, Gabriella. Thomas, how about we go to you next?
Hello, everybody. Thomas Hartman, 07, he, him, his. I have a degree in higher education and student affairs leadership. It's from the doctoral program at UNC. I'm currently a senior consultant at the Colorado Workforce Development Council. I build career pathways, and when I'm having fun, I'm out with my dogs or snowshoeing or something like that. The Colorado Great Outdoors.
Thank you, Thomas. And Aaliyah, would you like to go next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaliyah Martin, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I graduated in 2013. My major was in human services with a minor in psychology and biology. And I currently work with the Department of Local Affairs. I'm a grant manager. So I manage a grant that provides funding to nonprofits and local governments throughout the state to help address homelessness. And I currently live in the Denver area where I was born and raised, me and my daughter. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Aaliyah. And now I will hand it over to Cece to introduce herself, and they will also be our facilitator this afternoon. Cece.
Good afternoon. I'm Cece Makrowski. I graduated from the University of Northern Colorado in 2005. My major was in communication studies, and my minor is in legal studies. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm your moderator today, and I'm super excited to welcome these wonderful panelists. I do serve in the public sector as well. I'm a policy advisor for the Weld County Department of Human Services. And I will take it away. Thank you so much, Teresa. So first and foremost, I think all of our audience wants to know how your UNC experience helped launch your career and how it got you to your current role. So I want to go ahead and start with Gabriella.
yeah, so when I first went to UNC, I immediately went in with my degree, like psychology. I knew that's kind of what I wanted to do, but I just wasn't really sure where that wanted to take me or where I wanted to go with that. And then I had the psychology program at UNC really was helpful in the sense I took an internship. I was like, I don't feel like I learned very much. I liked it, but I just don't know if it was for me. And so I had the opportunity to get a second internship, and that's kind of where I found my path into what I'm doing now. Working for the legal system was not something that I had seen myself doing at all when I first kind of went to UNC. But I did take a class with Dr. Woody. He's phenomenal. Best professor I had at UNC. He was great. And I took a class with him called Psychology in the Law. And that's kind of what initially got me interested in my area of work. I then had so many questions. So I began meeting with Dr. Woody during his office hours, kind of asking him questions. Um, and then from there, so I got my internship at a place called Youth and Family Connections, and I was working with juveniles who were in the system. And then this kind of, again, furthered my interest even more. So then I graduated during 2020, May of 2020, which I know we all know what the state of the world was in 2020. And I knew this was kind of the area I wanted to go, and I knew I had to get a master's degree kind of to be able to work in the field that I was desiring. And so I immediately applied to grad school and I used my connections that I made at UNC. So Dr. Woody actually wrote me a letter of recommendation, and I also received a letter of recommendation to the university from my internship, both of my internship coordinators. And then, yeah, UNC just really set me up for success in multiple different avenues. It gave me connections, but it also kind of helped me discover what I really wanted to do with a really broad kind of subject and then kind of narrow it down.
That is awesome. I love hearing stories like that. Internships are amazing, and just having the built-in support is great. Aaliyah, how about you?
Oh, sorry, had to come off of mute. But I'd say my time at UNC, it was really instrumental in helping to shape my career. So I got my bachelor's degree, like I mentioned, in human services. And I think that really provided like a strong foundation for me to enter direct service roles. Um, and then I also had a couple of internships where I helped out at high schools and elementary school settings. And I think that really just solidified my passion for education and community work. And during my time at UNC, I also participated in the TRIO Ronald McNair Scholars Program, where I really was able to gain a lot of research experience and mentorship and just develop like a deeper commitment to equity and education and different career pathways. And when I was in that program, I was actually won second place award for my cohort on my research project. So that was amazing. But I think that really just helped prepare me for graduate studies as well. Ended up getting my master's in social work. But after I graduated from UNC, I immediately began working as a youth counselor at a treatment center before I transitioned to working at Denver Public Schools, where I spent about 6 years. I started as a workforce development case manager, where I supported students in preparing for different careers. And then later I became a regional program coordinator, where I oversaw a career exploration and mentorship program for high school students. So I'd say UNC really did help to equip me with the skills and the knowledge and that hands-on experience through the different internships that I had that really helped lay the foundation for my career working with youth and community programs and then just workforce development.
I'm glad that you mentioned TRIO, because there's there's programs in middle school and high school through TRIO as well that get you into college, but not a lot of people know that UNC also still has the programs. So that's great. And your tie to workforce leads me greatly over to Thomas Hartman. Tom, let's hear from you.
Just when I thought I had mute figured out. Hi, everybody. UNC, my experience was really instrumental in shaping my second career. The higher education student affairs leadership program gave me a strong foundation in leadership theory, organizational development, student development. And the program also emphasized really the importance of collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. Those skills have been essential throughout my career. In addition to coursework, my involvement in various student organizations and activities really helped me develop that leadership skill and more importantly, build an impressive network of colleagues and mentors. I also had the opportunity to work in various roles on campus while I was in school. So those gave me some really good experience, especially in higher ed. After I graduated from UNC, I began my career in higher education and student affairs leadership. I held various positions at several Colorado institutions and a couple of out-of-state ones. I gained a lot of experience in student services, academic affairs, and did a lot of work in technology. I think I was a CIO at a computer company at a university at one point in time, so that was interesting. In 2016, I joined the Colorado Workforce Development Council, and I was a talent development consultant. In that role, I used my knowledge of higher education and workforce development to help and create career pathways. I look at career pathways for students, for job seekers. I also work with a lot of stakeholders across industry, educators, and of course, policymakers. In 2022, I was promoted to a senior consultant, and in that role, I really lead the development and implementation of career pathways in in-demand industries. And I support CWDC, the Colorado Workforce Development Council, and all of its stakeholders. I've also joined the Alumni Board, and I use a lot of that career development work experience and connections at the state to try to bring that back to UNC and try to, pay it forward a little bit. And so that's really fun. I really think that UNC gave me that knowledge, skills, and network to be successful in my career. I'm really grateful for the opportunities I received, and I'm proud to be an alumni.
I love it. And thank you so much for continuing to serve UNC on the alumni board. It's really helpful. I know for me, it was a little different. I'm from Northern Colorado. I've never left Northern Colorado. So I had a job that I thought was a career while I was at UNC. So my degree was it was broad communication study. It could go anywhere. But I did end up falling into public service. I kind of just tripped and there I was, and I joined workforce development. And that's how I know Thomas. We were colleagues for quite a few years. But in my current role as a policy advisor for the Department of Human Services here in Weld County, my legal study minor is actually what helps me the most, because I loved reading law. A lot of people are like, you're crazy, you're insane. I love it. I think that it's great to see it there's black and white, but there's also that little gray area. And so how can we live in that gray, and how can we make our programs work for our communities? So I really have to attribute my current career to my minor. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me as your moderator, but I want to go ahead and continue on with our panelists. What are some professional development opportunities, such as certificates or training programs, that you would say have been valuable to your career? And I'm going to start with Aaliyah.
Oh, sorry, I am on my phone here. But I'd say, like, throughout my career, I think I've been really intentional about seeking out professional development opportunities that really have helped me grow, like, as a leader and as a practitioner in my field. One of the most impactful programs that comes to mind was one that I recently completed, which was the Urban Leadership Foundation of Colorado. And that really helped me further develop my leadership skills and really expand my professional network as well, and just gain a better, deeper understanding of how to lead effectively in various different spaces. And as I also mentioned, I do have my master's of social work. And while I was working towards that, I also earned a certificate in school social work, which provided me with more specialized knowledge when working with students and supporting their different needs in an educational setting. Mm-hmm. And more recently, I became licensed as a social worker in the state of Colorado. And I'm currently working towards obtaining my licensed clinical social worker credential, which requires a little over 3,300 hours of supervision under a licensed clinical supervisor. But I strongly believe in professional development opportunities, whether that's a leadership program, a certification, or any type of specialized training. I think that can really help set you apart in a really competitive job market that we are living in today. And those things not only help expand your expertise, but they also demonstrate your commitment to growth and just dedication to continuous learning within your field. So I would just highly encourage others to seek out certifications or additional training that really align with your career goals. And I think that can really open up different doors of opportunities for you.
Well, I think I can speak for everyone. You are amazing. That's absolutely awesome that you've done so much for your professional development. And I wish I had your energy to continue to do as much. So that's great. Let's go ahead and move on to you, Thomas.
Sure. In addition to the formal education, I've pursued a lot of professional development opportunities. Those opportunities have really helped me stay current in trends in higher education, workforce development, and project management. A couple of years ago, because of my working for the state, they're very good about professional development and they will help you pay for it. And so I took the opportunity to obtain my let's call it project management professional, PMP, people call it. That's really a globally recognized credential, and it's really helped me with project management methodologies, best practices. The exams, pretty rigorous. Really helped me provide the project management skills that I need in my current role as a project manager and as a consultant. In addition to my PMP, I take advantage of a lot of professional development opportunities through conferences, networking, seminars. We have a professional development platform at the state, and I can take whatever classes I'm interested in. We've had classes on how to be effective as a remote worker. You can imagine, if you can think of a training that's probably out there. So really, I think continuous learning is essential for career success. By pursuing some of these professional development opportunities, I feel like I've got the skills to succeed in my role.
That's great, Thomas. Gabriella, how about you?
Yeah, so I, like Aaliyah, also have a master's in social work as well. And so earlier you heard Aaliyah mention licensed social worker. So I'm on my final stage right now of becoming a licensed clinical social worker. So it's a yeah, Aaliyah knows this. It's a long haul, but it's definitely worth it. I think as mentioned, Aaliyah mentioned, you have supervision hours with somebody. You meet with them usually weekly, and I've been able to meet with them continuously, amp in my professional development there, being able to do case consultations, just kind of depending. It is important to note, so I actually changed career paths, still in the social work realm, but more focused on the criminal law side of it now. But previously, I was working as an individual therapist for juveniles in the justice system. And so I have a certification called it's the acronym is EMDR therapy, but that stands for eye movement desensitization and rationalization. So that kind of has helped me in my clinical work, meaning my one-on-one interactions with people. I've been really honed in on that aspect of it. And now that I've kind of taken a little bit of a career shift and working with a wider demographic of people, I have been jumping into any and all of the trainings. My office that I work for, I'm very fortunate. You'll probably hear me say that many a times because I work for a great place, but they offer consistent and continuous trainings. And so my best advice there, like anything you might be interested in, even if you're like curious about it, just do it and let your mind just kind of be open to working and learning so many new things. And additionally, I talk about this a little bit later, but working in the public sector for me, it's also important to volunteer and be a part of that community, and that also helps kind of broaden my horizons on that aspect. And so I volunteer currently with the Denver Homeless Coalition, and I specifically work with their juvenile clients there as well. So just kind of getting involved and learning through socially is just as important, I feel like, as learning from a book or trainings that you might get as well.
You are spot on, and thank you so much for volunteering. We have such a housing crisis right now, and our youth are definitely highly impacted. So I appreciate that. Now, I'm also here to ask you guys some hard questions. Working in the public sector often involves navigating bureaucracy. And so how do you manage the challenges that come with a more structured and regulated environment? And I will start with Thomas.
Give me the tough questions right out. Right. I appreciate that. You know, ensuring equity, accessibility, inclusion are top priorities in my work. Everyone should be able to succeed regardless of their background or their circumstances. One strategy that I use to promote equity and accessibility is to collect data on populations we serve. This data really helps us identify disparities in access or outcomes, which we can then use to target specific interventions to address those disparities. For example, we recently collected data on the participation of different racial and ethnic groups in our Career Pathways programs. We found that some of our programs had underrepresented populations of Black and Hispanic students. So then we use that data to develop targeted outreach and recruitment strategies to include participation from those groups. Another strategy I use to promote inclusion is to engage with diverse stakeholders. So this includes industry leaders, educators, community-based organizations, and members of the public. By engaging with all of those diverse stakeholders, we can kind of ensure that our programs and services are representing the needs of all members of our communities. For example, when developing a career pathway framework, we convened a stakeholder advisory group, and that included representatives from various industries, educational institutions, and community organizations. This group provided insight that was really valuable on the design and implementation of our framework. So I'm committed to ensuring that our programs and services are equitable, accessible, and inclusive. And I really think that by working together, we can create a more just and equitable society for all.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Excuse me, Gabriella.
Yeah, so this question, definitely hits me hard, just kind of with the world and everything. And working for the public defender's office, I work for the state, and I have a lot of very strict and structured guidelines and environments that I have to follow, which is definitely very difficult. I think for me, balancing the social side of me and how I feel, what needs to be going on. I kind of try to come in there and do all of these things, but I'm often limited to what I can do based off of the resources I have working for the state. But like I mentioned before, I work for an incredible agent, like the public defender's office is incredible in advocating for wide ranges of clients and hoping that they can get the best kind of support that they're needing. And so to navigate these things, I really rely pretty heavily on my office heads or office officials, supervisors in my office, kind of to talk through things. I'm such a client-centered person when I work. And so for me, this looks like talking one-on-one with my client, seeing asking them, not guessing, asking them is a very big key here, what their needs may be, what they're looking for in their experience in this world, taking that up, looking at what the regulations and things might look like, and working with that to also best serve my client while advocating for them in the best way. I really rely on my staff, like I mentioned, that I work with, my coworkers, everybody that I'm fortunate enough to work with. And I think taking away from that, I think regulations, this might be a bad thing to say, but they're not always as black and white as you may feel like they are. And, when it comes to doing what's best for what you feel is best for your clients and working in such a strict and structured place, again, it's not so black and white. There's ways to discuss things and ways to do things. And so all that to say, in order to navigate this, I really rely pretty heavily on the supports that I'm fortunate enough to have at my job.
I'm right there with you. I look for that gray. Aaliyah.
Yeah, so I'd say navigating the bureaucracy has been one of the most challenging things for me in my career. I think that just working in the public sector, it really requires you to have a lot of like patience and being adaptable. And as the others mentioned, just having a strong sense or a strong understanding of the policies and regulations that oftentimes are not easily interpreted. But I'd say one of the key ways that I kind of manage the challenges is just by staying informed. So having those conversations with my colleagues, reading articles, making sure that I just fully understand the guidelines and the policies and procedures that really shape my work. And I think that just kind of helps me like navigate different processes a little more effectively and efficiently too. And also helps others, like the grantees that I work with, as well as my colleagues, do the same thing. And I'd say another important thing is relationship building. Maybe I'm saying this because I have a social work background, but I think public sector work it requires you to like collaborate with a lot of different stakeholders. So you really have to be able to build those relationships like with your colleagues and then with leadership and with external partners. So just to help you navigate those challenges a little bit more effectively too. And I think when you do have that open communication and a good working relationship with others, then you can work together to find solutions rather than just feeling stuck in that, bureaucratic red tape sometimes.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Information is power, and leaning into other people's strengths and knowledge for sure. I know for me, I was very fortunate to have a mentor, somebody who had been in my public sector under workforce development for a really long time. And he was able just to help me understand. And you say this, Gabriella, it's going to sound bad for me too, but he made me understand like the state's not always right. The feds are not always right. And you really have to read the policies, the procedures, the language, and just see how it can work for you, for our clientele, for programs. And so again, living in that gray area for me has definitely helped me navigate bureaucracy, but I'm still staying within the rules. So just want to throw that out there. Let me move on, Gabriella. This is a long question for you, so I'm going to kind of take it here in two parts. How do you ensure that the programs and services you're involved with are not only equitable and accessible to all populations, especially underserved communities, but also inclusive of diverse perspectives? And then the second part, and I can repeat this later, can you share specific strategies or examples of how you've worked to promote both access and inclusion in your role?
I think I got it. It was a long question, but it is okay. I got it. So like I've mentioned before, my entire role right now is advocacy work and advocating for my clients. I work like with every population, every demographic, everybody. And so I think for one, and I know this was just kind of mentioned a little bit earlier by Aaliyah as well, but I am in the mindset that I'm always learning. Never feel like I know everything and what I know is how it is, because things are one, always changing, and the human experience is just so complex and so different for every individual. And so you just, especially in the working in the public sector, you have to be very adaptable and just be ready to evolve and go with it. And so do what you can to be involved. Like my I'm in an activist group at work where we kind of talk about the state of the world and how that affects our role and how that affects our clientele and how we can integrate those things in a way that's client-centered. Again, like I mentioned earlier, get involved in your community, see what is out there, allow yourself to just constantly evolve and never be stuck in one place is the best way that I've kind of worked through that. I think just listening to the needs of your community and your population you work with is so needed. I know when I first started in my social work role, I just had such this like savior fix it complex. Like, okay, I'm gonna go in, I see what's wrong, we're just gonna fix it. I know how to fix it. I know the guidelines of what would work and what would not work. And then, I slowly kind of started to see that again, it isn't so black and white. There is such a gray area, and that's why it's super, super important to listen with open ears and be adaptable and be able to go with whatever those individual needs are going to look like.
And I love that your employer is allowing you guys to be part of these groups, like having an activist group. So I highly encourage anyone who's part of, or if any type of DEIA groups are available at your employers, to definitely join or just, try it out and see where you can contribute. Aaliyah, how about you? And I can repeat the question if you need me to.
Oh, I think I got it. But I'd say, well, I come from an underrepresented population as a Black woman. So I think that in itself, I bring a more unique perspective that helps me really relate to the individuals that I serve. And I think that helps create or ensure a level of accessibility, equity, inclusion. And that's really allows me to keep those things central to my work. And I think I really do a good job at actively trying to seek input from other diverse communities as well. And just to address different barriers to access. I know that's a huge challenge for underrepresented populations, and to really advocate for policies that really prioritize those underserved populations. And I'd say to more promote inclusion, I really try to keep open communication. As I mentioned, I'm a grant manager right now, so keeping open communication with my grantees, and incorporating community feedback however I can, and really trying to simplify processes to make them more accessible. As you know, working with the government, they usually have you jumping. Nothing is straightforward and simple. So you oftentimes have to go through a lot of different hoops. So I try to simplify things as much as I can. And I also think I do a great job at collaborating with just diverse stakeholders to ensure that our policies really reflect those with lived experiences or those who are impacted the most. So yeah, my goal is always to create equitable systems that just empower those individuals who have been historically marginalized.
I think that it is so important, the stakeholder work, because a lot of citizens or a lot of people think we just make these roles as government employees and we don't take a lot of things into consideration. So greatly appreciate that you're doing that work, and I'm sure your grant recipients are really happy about that as well. Thomas, I know at the last question with bureaucracy, you touched on a little bit of those areas, but if you want to go ahead and provide any additional feedback, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Cece. I got excited and I started answering more anticipating questions. So, I just wanted to mention that one of the challenges of working in the public sector is navigating the bureaucracy. And, it can be frustrating. But I think it's essential for me to remember that the rules and regulations are in a place for a reason, and they're really designed to protect the public and ensure that government agencies are accountable to the taxpayers. Despite the challenge, I enjoy working in the public sector. I'm proud to be a public servant, and I'm really committed to making a difference in people's lives. So I think when we're looking at the national landscape, it's hard not to take that into consideration. but I'm not only proud to have gone to school in Colorado, but to live and work in Colorado, because as a state, I think government's working for us. And of course, we're looking for efficiencies, but we can't forget the people that we're intended to serve.
Wonderful, wonderful advice. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm from Northern Colorado. I'm a lifelong resident of Weld County. I've never left Weld County, vacation, but I was really fortunate to have somewhat of a built-in professional network in addition to my personal network. And so as each of you ventured away from Northern Colorado, can you explain how you began really building your professional network in the public sector and how it's helped throughout your career? And then also, what advice do you have for students on starting to network in the public sector field? And let's start with Aaliyah.
So I would say for me, it's taken some time for me to build my network because I really am naturally like a more shy and introverted person. So this has been like years of work. But I think I've built much of my professional network by joining different boards and commissions, and then the leadership program that I did mention. And I think that's allowed me to connect with different industry professionals and just gave me better insight into other career opportunities too. I also try to attend as many community events as possible, just to help me stay informed and build those relationships more organically too. But I do think that networking has been like invaluable. And you can get a lot of career opportunities by just simply having those conversations. So to the students, I would just strongly recommend getting involved early, putting yourself in spaces that you might feel uncomfortable, because that's oftentimes where you grow the most. Join professional organizations if you can, attend public meetings, and introduce yourself to different people in your field and even outside of your field, because you never know what opportunities that could open up. So I'd say just consistently showing up and engaging in conversations. Those can really just create meaningful connections that open doors for yourself. So.
Absolutely. And if you wouldn't have said anything, I would have no idea that you're shy.
Oh, I'm
You
happy
seem
coming across that way.
Gabriella, how about you?
Yeah, so I mean, starting out in the field and in any field, right, in general, is so intimidating. Like I remember when I first graduated, like I was just like, okay, now what? Like, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do here? I have to be an adult. Like, it's very intimidating. So I just want to, first and foremost, empathize with that situation. But I'm also here to say that that pretty much happens to everybody. Everybody, and I'm saying that not to be like, oh, boo-hoo. Like, I'm saying it in the sense that everybody you're interacting with has also been through that exact same experience as well of starting out and trying to make connections and build things. I know the advice part was the second part of this question, but it just felt natural to kind of add it here. I remember like all the way back when I was like 15 or 16, like getting my first ever job, and my mom was telling like I wasn't hearing back from jobs, and my mom was like, "Oh, like you have to call them. You have to check in and see what they're saying." And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to like bother anybody." And my mom's like, "No, bother them." Like workplaces do to a degree, let me say, but they do want to be bothered because it shows that you're passionate and like you're interested in doing that work. And, you know, this is something I really had to work for, but just settle for any fear of rejection that you may have. Like rejection is going to happen inevitably, but I think in thinking about the rejection, I think something worse than rejection is the wondering. What like as if you get a rejection, at least it's an answer. It doesn't leave you sitting there being like, oh, like what could have happened? So for me personally, like I mentioned, so I went to grad school. The first part of this question was how we got involved in the public sector in the first place. And my journey, I had my first ever internship in grad school, and I had my supervisor and mentor, and I stayed connected with her. Again, she probably was like, Gabby, please stop texting me. I don't want to hang out with you. But I was like, no, girl, I'm new in this career. I need to know what to do. Help me. And I really relied on a mentor. Mentorship is huge in a lot of fields, but this one, at least for me specifically, it was so big because navigating working in this field is very difficult. And so I just do your best to stay connected, build professional and good relationships with mentors. Stick up for yourself always, but also pick out the good ones and stick with them, because I think that helped me. Like my first mentor for my first internship, like she helped me get my first job out of grad school. Like she recommended me, she introduced me to people, she helped further that network. And so, I mean, the phrase, it's about who you know, is true in multiple regards, but I say just put yourself out there. It's hard, but you can do it. Everybody's been in your shoes, and hopefully they can also remember that as well.
I definitely remember that. How about you, Tom?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, I grew up and worked in North Dakota, and I was at a professional conference for counseling. I was working in a student affairs role, and I had met professors from UNC's student affairs program. And I talked to them at the conference, and I'm like, oh, I'm so interested. I love what you do. I don't know if a PhD pursuit would actually benefit me. And they kind of talked me into it. And next, I got home, and within a couple of days, I got a letter or an email, and basically saying, hey, we've got a scholarship for you if you want to come and join the program. And if it wouldn't have been for that conference and making that connection with those professors, and like, these are real people. Real people can pursue degrees of higher ed and PhDs. And I'm like, okay, great. Never would have considered it otherwise. You know, so my professional network's really been invaluable throughout my career. It's helped me find opportunities, job advice, support, and learn about new opportunities. And it's, you know, Gabriella, it's talking to people and putting yourself out there. And, you know, the blind resumes, and I sent 100 resumes out today, and we all know how effective that is. But having that informational interview, hey, I really like what y'all do. I'd like to learn more. And just demonstrating that curiosity and like, I would like to be around you people. I think that speaks volumes, and I really like that. My advice for students would be, you know, build a professional network, start early while you're in college, before you're in college, if you can. You know, do the internships, the apprenticeships, do the work-based learning experiences, join professional organizations. A lot of the organizations that I was in and am in, they had a student version. In other words, the membership fees were a lot smaller, and you could get scholarships to go to the conference. Because I know starting out, travel is not something that you can just afford to do. And so look to see if there's another version of that you can attend. Don't be afraid to ask people for help. You know, those of us on the call, reach out to us on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'd like to ask you a few questions. We like to talk about ourselves, and people generally do. We like to explain how we got where we are. Everybody has that origin story. Don't be afraid to ask. People will generally not turn you away, not be upset with you. If you're asking about, hey, I'm interested, can you tell me more?
Wonderful. Well, I want to do a quick time check. We have about 10 minutes. I did want to ask all of you about if you faced a crisis situation in your career, but I think all of us, you know, Gabriella, you were graduating, but it was COVID, it was the pandemic. So I think I want to go ahead and just kind of sail over that question today. And if anybody wants to hear our answers, definitely reach out to us. Our information has been put into the chat. But let's go ahead and move on to almost our final question here. So how do the three of you see the public sector evolving in the next decade? Are you seeing any different trends or changes? And how can our current graduating students, really prepare for that? And so I'm going to start with Gabriella.
Yeah, I will say this is a very difficult question. For me, I mean, I don't know how everybody else feels, but like the public sector is constantly evolving. For me, I don't even know in the next decade what that's going to look like. But I think a big trend that I've seen, there's some negative trends, right? Like we can acknowledge that aspect. But I also want to positively acknowledge a trend that's going on as well. Is I'm noticing people have been using their voices so much more. They haven't been sitting silent. They've been standing up, speaking up. And I don't have too much more to say about that, but that is the biggest change that I would say I'm excited to see how it continues to evolve and to see and hear how all these wonderful people will use their voice and continue to use it moving forward.
Completely agree. Aaliyah, how about you?
So I really do think that AI is going to play a huge role in the public sector and just kind of shaping the way that work gets done. I think there's going to be a greater need for people who are in like data analytics, people who can analyze data, people who can create policies, and people who can connect with communities in ways that technology can't. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And I think there's going to be a stronger focus on equity, accessibility, and flexible work models. I currently get to work from home on a 4-10 schedule, which is a lovely thing. So I think that's something to look forward to in the future as well. But I think students can probably best prepare for these future changes by just building your problem solving skills up, your tech skills, communication, and just staying as adaptable and flexible as you can, and still really try and focus on those real human connections, because I feel like we're kind of losing a sense of that with AI, but it's still so important. So
AI is definitely impacting the communication piece. I mean, technology as a whole. And Tom, I saw you throw your head back. Were you thinking the same?
Absolutely. AI is a big piece. I've just gone through trainings and I've been using and learning more about it. Government, public service, maybe we're a little bit slow to pick it up because there are security concerns, rightfully so, and how we use data. We want to protect public data. I think the focus, though, on data really is accountability. We need to say, how do you know you're doing what you're doing? We work a lot with the legislature and they're funding programs, and we're in a budget cut year. And they're like, which programs are we going to cut? Well, the ones that can't demonstrate through data the success of their programs, it's going to be harder to defend that program. Along with that kind of comes the focus on innovation. You've got to be innovating. You can't just do things the way you've always done them. Innovation is also a big piece of that. And I think we're going to have to, even in a world of AI, we're just going to have to collaborate more. We're going to have conversations with real people to solve problems. If you're trying to solve problems for people, you have to involve people. A lot of my students have taught me nothing about us without us. And so if we're trying to solve for student something, they should be part of the solution. And so let's bring them in. Yeah, I'll just say analysis, data analysis, collaboration, and innovation are big trends that I'm focused on.
And you are spot on. And in my role, policy advisor, I am knee deep in legislation right now. And it is crazy how many programs could potentially be cut. And so having that information is definitely crucial. All right. right, so in 1 minute or less, I would like each of you to provide a final word of advice for UNC Bears that are currently seeking a career within the public sector. Aaliyah, let's start with you.
Okay, so I would just say stay open to learning, always be willing to be a student of the work, build those strong relationships and connections, get involved in your community, um, whether that's through like internships, sports, community events, networking events. And as we mentioned, the public sector is always evolving. So stay adaptable. And I think we all have very unique perspectives on different things. So I just say I would encourage you to use your perspective to help drive some meaningful change in the work that you're doing.
Thomas, how about you?
I would say if you're, a bear seeking a career in the public sector, be persistent, similar to what Gabriella said. Be patient. I've been trying to talk to people, and especially new college grads. There's first job, next job, and best job. And it doesn't happen right away. Also, be prepared to work hard. Working in the public sector is hard work, but you get to make an influence. You can really influence, you can really make a difference in the lives of others. And it's worth it.
Gabriella.
Yes, I mean, echo everything already said. And off of that, like I think the biggest thing too that I had to learn, especially, first going out into the career field, is you don't have to do the first thing you do for the rest of your life. Like that's such a bit, and I know Thomas just kind of touched on that maybe a little bit with like the first job, second best job sort of thing. If you try something out, like, and it's not for you, that's okay. Like, and I think that's the biggest thing to remember is your life does not have a timeline or a certain thing or a certain end of like when you need to be doing anything at all. So it's okay to put yourself out there, try something different, learn new things, just being open to all of these different avenues, right? I think with the public sector aspect, like it's hard work. I cannot lie to you. I'm sure all the other panelists can agree. It's very emotionally taxing and it can be a lot. And so my best advice on that aspect is always take care of yourself. And you can't show up as your best self for your clients or who you're working with if you're not feeling good yourself. So that's my piece with that. Thank you.
That is wonderful advice from all three of you. And I'm, the same. I'm kind of like a broken record with, same thing Thomas and Gabriella was saying, I did not go into the public sector when I left UNC. I fell into it. And so I was the best job when I found the public sector, and being passionate about your work is really what makes a huge difference in your daily life. It does help with work life balance as well if you're really happy and passionate about what you work. There's also beauty in lifelong learning, and every day we're picking up new skills, and we have different life lessons, and we're continuously growing until we find those strengths that fit with us. So again, maybe you don't start in the public sector, and maybe you end up there eventually. And if you do, just reach out to any one of us bears on social media, and we'll help happily and gladly, mentor you as you start in that journey. And so thank you guys so much for being here today. I want to go ahead and turn it over to Teresa.
Thank you so much, Cece, and thank you to all of our panelists. And for those who joined today, it is always an honor and a pleasure to host fellow Bears and to hear about their unique experience, their unique identities, career paths, and industry insights. Throughout the semester, we'll be hosting one more actually virtual alumni career panel. To learn more, you can visit www.unco/alumni/careers. And before we end, our colleagues over at UNC Center for Career Readiness will share some insight into their resources.
Hi everyone, my name is Krista Harvey. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated from UNC in 2023 with my bachelor's, and I will graduate this May with my master's. I'm currently a graduate assistant / career counselor at UNC Center for Career Readiness. Here at the Center for Career Readiness, we are here to support you with all things career while you are a current student on campus, as well as up to 3 years after graduation. Our office connects UNC Bears to quality on-campus community and national employers through the career tool Handshake and hosting on-campus career fairs each semester. Students are encouraged to schedule an appointment with our career counseling team for resume, cover letter reviews, job internship and grad school search support, mock interviews, networking tips, and more. We offer drop-in hours as well as job fairs and workshops throughout each semester. Further information on all of this can be found on our website, unco.edu/career, or you're more than welcome to email us at career.readiness@unco.edu.
Perfect. Thank you, Krista. And I'm going to ask everybody to unmute themselves really quickly. And on a count of 3, we're going to do Go Bears, okay? 1, 2, 3.
Go Bears!
Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.